We were heading in a new direction. My name's Arthur Bell, 48 years old, 2 decades at Hollowgate Systems, the largest residential builder in Phoenix. I handled subcontractor compliance across every job from Scottsdale to Tempe. Checked licenses, enforced codes, verified specs. My job was making sure buildings stood tall and lawyers stayed quiet. The new VP, Jacob Morrison, gave his introductory speech behind my desk like he already owned it. Fresh in from some Denver office. Probably never swung a hammer. His suit cost more than my crew's weekly wages. "We need fresh ideas," he said, eyes skimming past me. I knew what that meant. Cheap labor dressed up as efficiency. Fast builds with hidden flaws. Approvals that skip steps for speed. I didn't argue. After 20 years of flawless audits, 0 violations, city awards, none of it mattered. He already had a replacement. Trevor Banks, 34, business degree, no clue about foundations or fire codes. Jacob paraded him around like the missing piece we'd all been waiting for. I packed my codebooks, project logs, and a career's worth of experience into 3 boxes and a nod from HR. On the way to my truck, I passed the Sunrise Hills site, 3 houses in different phases. Lot 12, foundation done. Lot 9, framing started. Lot 6, electrical scheduled. I'd managed every inch for 8 months. Trevor was taking over next morning. I sat in my truck, watching the sun sink behind South Mountain. 2 decades of 5 a.m. alarms, site walks, and signed approvals that meant real families slept under safe roofs. Now a kid with buzzwords would be signing off on jobs he didn't understand, while Jacob raced for profit and cut corners like they were coupons. Inspection timelines would turn optional. I drove home, but my gut told me this wouldn't end well. I joined Hollowgate right out of trade school, climbed my way up, learned the right way from seasoned pros who'd lived through collapsed roofs and burned-out wires. My dad, 37 years a union electrician, always said, "Every wire you pass could save or take a life. Don't ever forget that." I didn't. I met my wife Claire on site in 2009. City inspector. She spotted a pipe error 3 others missed. We argued over building code for 20 minutes before I admitted she was right, and I was smitten. Married her 8 months later. Our daughter Rebecca is now 15, sophomore, volleyball player, wants to be an engineer. She grew up on job sites, always asking about structural loads and voltage. Made me proud that she understood why we build the way we do. But the warning signs have been creeping in. Jacob showed up in February, questioned everything. Why multiple bids? Why wait for inspection? Why not use one guy for everything? I tried to explain. Code wasn't red tape. It was protection. The good contractors cost more because they fixed things before they failed. Jacob nodded, but didn't hear me. His eyes were on spreadsheets, not structures. Then came the first red flag, April. He asked me to reconsider rejecting a shoddy electrician. The guy had a license, but I'd seen his work. Messy, dangerous, amateur. "Maybe we're being too rigid," Jacob said. "Maybe people deserve chances." I held firm. Found a real electrician, $800 more, but safe. Jacob signed it, but made a note. I saw him jotting something down. By summer, he was second-guessing everything. By August, Trevor was copied on all my emails. He'd ask questions that showed he didn't understand the answers. Jacob praised him as a fast learner. The only one who noticed was Bill Santos, senior PM. Old school. Back when a failed inspection could sink your business. "Watch your back, Arthur," he told me. "The new guy's digging." I should have listened harder. The betrayal landed 3 days after Trevor officially took my role. I was clearing out my drawer when Claire called. "She works at City Building." "Arthur, are you still managing Sunrise Hills?" "No." "Why?" "Because someone just swapped electricians. It says you approved it." My blood went cold. I hadn't signed anything. She pulled it up on her screen. My signature, or close enough forgery, sat at the bottom. Enough to pass with a glance. The application requested approval to replace Martinez Electric, a licensed contractor I'd worked with for 7 years, with Valley Wire Services. I'd never even heard of them. "Run their license number," I told Claire. She typed it in and waited for the database to load. Her face changed the moment she read it. Arthur, their license was suspended 6 months ago. Multiple violations, bad installations, skipped permits. She paused, then added, and unsupervised work. The owner, Danny Vance, had his master electrician certification revoked in 2021. We stared at the screen. There was my signature approving a company I'd never vetted and who wasn't even legally allowed to operate. Someone forged my signature, I said quietly. Claire printed out the change order, license records, and violation history. I folded the documents into my jacket pocket and drove off, thinking about Lot 6 at Sunrise Hills. Rough-in work was this week. If Vance was already on site, he'd be wiring walls soon to be sealed with drywall. Dangerous work, done by someone who'd already lost his license for it. 3 families were moving into those homes by Christmas. Kids would sleep in bedrooms wired by a man who wasn't certified to wire a lamp. I parked outside Hollowgate's office and sat for a long time, watching through the window. Trevor Banks was on the phone, probably talking to contractors he had no business directing. Jacob Morrison had replaced me to save money and give his friend a job, but they'd gone too far. This wasn't about ego anymore. It was about protecting families from a disaster waiting to happen. I started the engine and drove to the Arizona State Licensing Board. I've been there dozens of times for license renewals and training, not to file a complaint against my own company. Margaret Torres ran the compliance division, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd seen every shortcut in the book. She listened as I laid out the situation, examined the forged forms, and verified license records. "You said you were replaced 3 days ago?" she asked. "Yes, but they used my name on paperwork filed just yesterday." She started scribbling notes. "And this new supervisor, how long's he been in the field?" "As far as I know, never." "Business background?" "Zero site experience." Margaret looked up, "And he approved a contractor with a suspended license?" "Either that or someone forged my name to do it." She leaned back. 27 years in compliance had taught her to recognize when something stank. "Companies that cut corners rarely stop at one," she said. "If this pans out, it'll trigger a mandatory site inspection. If we find unlicensed work, we red tag the project." I nodded. "How long would that shut them down?" "Could be days or months. Depends on what we find." I pictured Jacob's face when inspectors walked in unannounced. Trevor stumbling through excuses he didn't understand. The entire Sunrise Hills project frozen mid-build, while officials sorted through every last approval. "There's one more thing," Margaret added. "If violations are confirmed, the state may contract a consultant to help fix things. Someone familiar with the project. Someone like the original supervisor." She handed me a form, an official complaint against Hollowgate for using unlicensed contractors and falsifying documents. I signed it with my actual signature. "When does the inspection happen?" I asked. "Could be tomorrow. Could be next week. We don't announce it." On the drive home, I thought about the timing. If Valley Wire had already started on Lot 6, the rough-in would be halfway done. Wires threaded, junctions set, circuits live, all without permits. All illegal. All dangerous. Claire was at the kitchen table when I got home, grading papers from her engineering course at the college. She knew the code as well as any inspector. "How'd it go?" she asked. I told her everything. The report, the red tag risk, the potential consulting offer. "You think they'll find violations?" she asked. "I think Trevor can't tell a license from a laminated business card. And Jacob only cares about deadlines and discounts." She gave me a look, half smile and half sigh. "You could have walked away. Let them learn the hard way." "Could have," I said. "Didn't." She went back to grading, but I saw it. The look she gives when I've decided I'm not backing down. 20 years of marriage. She knew that look. My phone buzzed. Text from Bill Santos. "Heard Trevor brought in someone called Valley Wire for Lot 6. You know them?" I replied, looking into it. Word was spreading. Project managers were starting to double-check approvals, raise questions, watch their backs. Trevor Banks was about to learn the construction industry isn't as big as he thought, and that some mistakes don't just ruin projects. They ruin reputations. The call came 2 mornings later, just after sunrise. Margaret Torres, ready to move. The voice on the line was official and cautious. "Arthur, We need you at the Sunrise Hills site in 1 hour. Bring your documentation. I dressed quickly, grabbed the folder Claire had printed, and drove through the pale desert morning, trying to guess what the inspectors had found. Sunrise Hills was already alive with activity. 3 state vehicles were stationed at separate lots, inspectors with clipboards and cameras moving between them. Margaret met me at the site trailer, where Trevor Banks sat pale-faced across from 2 compliance officers. He looked like a man realizing business school hadn't prepared him for the real world. Arthur, we need to verify a few things. Our records show you approved electrical work by Valley Wire on Lot 6. The contractor claims you also signed off on Lots 9 and 12. My gut dropped. Lots 9 and 12 weren't part of the original complaint. If Trevor had used Vance across multiple properties, this was bigger than I thought. I didn't approve Valley Wire for anything. I didn't even know they existed until 3 days ago. Margaret laid out 3 sets of documents in front of me. Each one carried a signature that looked like mine, authorizing Valley Wire for electrical rough-ins on 3 separate lots. The dates spanned 2 weeks, including after I'd been officially removed from the project. The plot thickens, said Inspector Rodriguez, a broad man who'd seen 2 decades of bad wiring jobs. There's active electrical work on all 3 lots. No permits. No la hice en supervisión. The guy on site couldn't show us a valid license. Trevor finally spoke. I was told he was licensed. I saw the paperwork. What paperwork exactly? Margaret pressed. Trevor shuffled through a file and pulled out a photocopy of an electrical license. The number matched Danny Vance, but the expiration date had clearly been tampered with. 2021 turned into 2024 by pen, then photocopied. Where'd you get this? Rodriguez asked. Danny gave it to me when I hired him. Trevor mumbled. Said the database might be slow to reflect the renewal. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. Trevor had been duped by a contractor with a revoked license. But only because he hadn't done his due diligence. That sympathy vanished when I pictured those families living in homes wired by someone who didn't know what they were doing. Rodriguez handed me a hard hat. Arthur, come walk these homes with us. We want your take. Lot 6 was a mess. Junction boxes installed wrong. Guayagalles mismatched. Splices sloppily held together with tape. It was the kind of work you expect from a DIY video, not a certified electrician. Lot 9 was worse. The main panel violated at least 6 separate codes. Circuits overloaded. Grounding almost non-existent. The service line looked like it had been strung up by someone following a cartoon sketch. Lot 12 was half done, but it showed the same disregard for safety and code. How long to fix this? I asked. Rodriguez shook his head. Best case, 6 weeks if we get qualified electricians quickly. Worst case, we tear it all out and start fresh. Margaret was already taking notes. All 3 lots were red-tagged. Work suspended. The contractor was being referred to the Attorney General for fraud and working without a license. Trevor, she said, turning to the man who'd taken my place. You're suspended from making any further electrical approvals pending full investigation into your qualifications. I watched him realize his first week on the job might also be his last. When I returned to Hollowgate later that day, the office buzzed differently. Word had spread about the inspection, the red tags, and the investigation. Jacob Morrison's door was shut, but his voice carried through, likely explaining to corporate why the state had shut down a major housing project. Bill Santos met me near the front desk, grinning like he'd hit the jackpot. Arthur, you beautiful bastard. How'd you know? Know what? I said evenly. That Trevor's guy was a fraud. The whole office is buzzing. I kept my face neutral. Just heard there was an inspection this morning. Shame they found anything. Bill nodded slowly, but his eyes said he knew exactly what had gone down. After 24 years in construction, he could tell the difference between a coincidence and a calculated move. Investigators want to speak with everyone involved in approvals at Sunrise Hills, he said. They'll want your input too, I'm sure. Happy to help, I replied. An hour later, Margaret called. The state was assembling a remediation team to assess the scope of the violations and oversee code corrections. They wanted a veteran compliance lead to consult, someone who knew the project. Pays $300 per day, plus expenses, she said. Likely 6 weeks of work, maybe 8 depending on what else we uncover. I did a quick mental calculation. Minimum $18,000, more than I'd made in the last 3 months at Hollowgate. And I'd be reporting to state inspectors, not paper pushers in suits. When do I start? I asked. Monday. Be at the site trailer by 7 a.m. When I got home, Claire was finishing dinner. Rebecca was helping with the vegetables, talking about volleyball drama. Life at home went on, even as my professional world flipped upside down and then landed on its feet. The state wants me consulting at Sunrise Hills, I told Claire. 6 to 8 weeks. Good pay. Rebecca looked up. Does that mean the people who replaced you messed up? Language, Claire warned. But she was smiling. Yes, I said. They messed up. Big time. Rebecca grinned. Good. I never liked that Jacob guy anyway. He was rude to you at the picnic. The company picnic. Smart kid. She'd picked up on Jacob Morrison's attitude before I had admitted it to myself. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Arthur, this is Danny Vance. Need to talk to you about this inspection thing. Can we meet? I showed the message to Claire. The unlicensed electrician wants to talk. Looks like it. Are you going to meet him? Probably not, but I'm definitely forwarding it to Margaret Torres. I sent her the message with a note. The contractor who used my forged signature is trying to contact me directly. Thought you should know. Her response came quickly. Do not meet him. Screenshot everything. Forward any further messages. This could be witness tampering. Witness tampering. That hadn't occurred to me, but it made sense. Danny Vance reaching out directly suggested he wasn't just worried about his reputation. He was worried about charges. Trevor Banks had been conned, but Jacob Morrison had built the environment where the con could happen. And both were about to learn that real consequences exist in construction. Monday, I'd be back at Sunrise Hills, but this time working for the state, not Hollowgate. Sometimes the system actually worked. The meeting took place in Hollowgate's main conference room 3 weeks into the state investigation. Corporate execs from Denver were present, along with lawyers in sleek suits and insurance reps typing cost estimates. Jacob Morrison sat at the end of the table, looking like someone who'd just realized the shortcuts he'd signed off on were now officially state documented. Trevor Banks wasn't there. He'd been fired the day after his suspension, once HR realized he'd lied about his credentials. Margaret Torres presented the findings. 3 homes, each with serious electrical issues, 14 code violations, forged documents, and weeks of unsupervised work. The estimate to fix it all? $430,000. Margaret added, the state is referring the matter to the Attorney General for charges related to contractor fraud and forgery. I sat in the corner, officially as a consultant, unofficially watching Jacob Morrison's expression crack as each number was read aloud. $430,000 in costs. 6 weeks of construction delay. Legal exposure. A corporate lawyer asked the only question that mattered. How did this happen? Margaret opened my file. The original compliance supervisor, Arthur Bell, has a spotless 20-year record, multiple commendations, and 0 violations. He was replaced by someone with no construction background who didn't verify licenses or review paperwork thoroughly. Jacob tried to defend himself. We were applying efficiency protocols. You were cutting corners, Margaret snapped. And 3 families nearly moved into homes with life-threatening electrical hazards. One of the insurance reps was typing furiously. $430,000 in losses. Legal fees. Lawsuits. Brand damage. Bonding risks. Margaret closed the report. We recommend that Hollowgate reappoint Arthur Bell as compliance supervisor for all phases going forward. He knows the development, the team trusts him, and the inspection board supports this decision. All eyes turned to me. 3 weeks earlier, Jacob had removed me for being too rigid. Now the state demanded I return to fix what he broke. Mr. Bell, said the corporate lawyer, would you consider resuming your position as consultant? I replied, with full reporting authority to the state compliance team. Jacob turned red, but he couldn't protest. Hollowgate needed the state's green light to continue the project, and the state had made me the condition. 6 months later, I was sipping coffee in my new office when Bill Santos knocked. I've been hired permanently as Regional Compliance Director, overseeing 3 major projects and enjoying a well-earned raise. Heard from Margaret today, Bill said. Danny Vance pled guilty. Contractor fraud. 6 months in jail, 3 years probation. Banned from ever holding a license again. Oh, and Trevor's selling insurance in Tucson now. His resume doesn't mention his 2 weeks in construction. Jacob Morrison lasted only a month longer. Corporate figured out that his so-called efficiency protocols cost more than my entire year's salary. Efficiency experts who created $500,000 problems didn't exactly scream value. That afternoon, Claire brought Rebecca to visit the office. They toured the space while I wrapped up reports. Rebecca seemed impressed by the view of the job sites. I was now in charge of developments where every contractor was licensed, every approval reviewed, and every signature traced back to the person who actually signed it me. Dad, Rebecca said, my engineering professor says the people who do things right the first time never get famous, but the ones who fix the messes, they get promoted. Smart professor, is me lid. She also said revenge is a dish best served with documentation and regulatory compliance. I laughed. She actually said that? No, but she should have.